Okay, so this video we are talking about value contrast. Value contrast is super important on Project 02, as well as Project 3 and Project 4. This is probably the most important way and the best way to make a focal point stand out is to use value contrast. The human eye is naturally drawn towards value contrast. And that will, just allow us to make something pop and make something stand out. So it's a little bit tricky, but I'm going to be looking for it on Project 2. But we'll kind of come back to it and talk about this before Project 3 and 4 as well, just to make sure you guys understand it. So that's basically just look at this little dot here I just drew versus this dot here. Okay, which one has more value contrast here? Meaning the biggest difference in values, okay? So this one here or this one here? Yes, the one on the right, because this is a pure white against a pure black rather than a gray against a black. So, has anyone ever made a value scale? You may have made it in like a drawing class, a painting class, something like that. But this is the one I like to use as a 5-point value scale. So we'll basically go from 0 black to 25% to 50 to 75 and then to 100. Okay, so 100 is easy. Fill that in pure black. So whatever tool you're drawing with, whether in your sketchbook, so whether it's pencil, pen, whatever it may be, I want you guys to pause this video after I do the value scale demo and make your own value scale. Okay, so the biggest thing here is we just want to see a smooth transition from white to pure black. So there's about 25%. Here's about 50% black. Let's get that there. And then down to about 75. So now we have these really nice steps as we go along, 25% by 25%, okay? And this also helps us to talk about these values more. I know some people have more of a number brain, so sometimes it helps to be able to assign numbers to these actual values. So I might say, oh, your sky looks pretty good at 50%, but maybe you should make it a little lighter to about 20 or 25%, and we can use that to discuss your work. So depending on what you're drawing with, you'll have to draw these value scales a little different. So here's a brush that's kind of like a pencil here. So if you're doing pencil, you're going to have to layer it up and push down really hard to get those really dark values of that. Okay? So that's why I suggest doing this value scale with whatever tool you usually draw with. If you draw with pen, you might have to do hatching like this, where you just layer it up to get those really dark values. So figure out how it will work best for you to get these different values in your sketchbook. So now is a good time to kind of pause the video and have your sketchbook out and just make your own value scale for 0, 25, 50, 75, and 100% black. Okay, hopefully you drew those value scales. So now let's just look at this. Let's pretend this is a thumbnail for possibly the project. So I have this shape here, and I want that to be my focal point, okay? So usually you will want your focal point to be really, really light or really, really dark to make it stand out. So let's kind of start, and let's say we want this to be a light value focal point. So if that focal point is going to be light, I only want it to be light if the majority of my composition is going to be dark. Okay, so I can now come up and make this a light white value here. And this now has, actually let me make this just a little lighter. Okay, this has pretty good value contrast. So this right here now, this is about a 75. And we know this is a 0. So that's a pretty good contrast of value there, okay? But let's increase that value contrast right here. So what color should I make this shape right here? What color should I make this shape to really get more value contrast in there? So just look at this. how can I put what value should I make this shape? Right, I should make it 100% black. So now we have really good value contrast. Before we had pretty good value contrast, now we have really good value contrast, okay? All right, so now I can fill in these other shapes as well. I can make them darker or lighter as long as they don't have more contrast between them, okay? So the biggest area of difference of values is still right there because this is a 0 against a 100. So that's 100% difference in value. Whereas here, if this is a 75 and this is about an 80, it's only a, what, 5% difference in value, okay? Maybe I want some other shapes in here. I can make them a little bit lighter too, like a little trail of dots here as another leading line. There's some value contrast here, but it's not as much. Again, so this is about a fit. These dots I just did, these are about a 50. And against the 75, that's only a 25% difference, okay? So usually your focal point will be extreme light against extreme dark or extreme dark against extreme light. Okay, let's do this one down here. Usually I oftentimes like to just put a 50% in there. That's a good way to start with these values, okay? So for this one, I want to do a really dark value for this focal point, since we did light for the last one. So I'm just going to start. So it's oftentimes just a good way to start. Put 100% there for that. For that focal point. Okay. So I want that focal point to be the darkest. So I'll do about a 75 for these other buildings. Okay, and to go back to this value scale here, for a majority, let's just say for all our compositions, you want to use a little bit of all of these, okay? So you don't want to have all really dark values because it's going to be hard to see. You don't want to have all really light values because it's going to look washed out. So you want to use this entire value scale in every single composition. Okay, so we got about a 75 there. We got about a 50 here for the sky. So we can make these clouds like a 25 maybe. That looks nice. Okay, so now we have pretty good value contrast. So we got a difference here. This is 100. 100 for the building and about a 50 for the sky. So a difference of 50. That's pretty good value contrast. But how can I bump that up? How can I get even more value contrast? Well, that shape behind my focal point. So you guys notice usually I like to put a shape behind there because that's a really good way to get in that value contrast. So what value should I make that sun type shape? Yes, I should make it 100. Or no, 0. Now it's 0 against 100. And now that building, the viewer's eye is going to get drawn right to this section. The viewer's eye is going to get drawn right to that section, okay? So this is what I'm going to be looking for on all the projects, but I want you guys to try and get value contrast in your final art designs for project 2. And you know, you want to start thinking about these values even when you're just doing your thumbnails, okay? So this will be a critique I have on your thumbnails as well when we do that. And I offer feedback on your critiques or on your thumbnails. All right. So here's an abstract composition I made. So let's say we were looking at this together, or I was looking at your work, I was grading it, or you asked me to look at it and give you suggestions before you turned it in. And we would say, I want this to be my focal point. This shape right here. It's an interesting shape. It's angular. It's different than all the other shapes. It's kind of standing out. You know, it's on a third. There's leading lines pointing at it. But what does this need? What would be my main critique here if I was to look at this work? Right, it needs better value contrast. So right now, so I'm in Illustrator now. So this shape, okay, so I look at this. This isn't 100%. This is like an 80. So just doing that, that already helps. Solid black is a powerful value. It's going to draw the eye, so that helps. Okay. And now I can adjust this one too. This is, we have some value contrast here, so this is like a 20, 25 now. Let's just make that pure white. Oh, that there already helps so much. So now we got pure black against pure white, and that stands out. So now it's pretty good. The only thing I would do now is this one, like this does not need to be this dark because this isn't an important shape. This is not my focal point. So I'm just going to lighten this up a bit so there's less value contrast there. So some places you want less value contrast. Same with this. This shape does not need to be that dark. There we go. And this one does not need to be quite pure white. Let's darken that a little bit. There we go. And you know, you can have some darker values in there. I'm going to just darken these along the ground a little bit. I don't want them quite as dark as the focal point. They could be. That's actually kind of interesting. They can be that dark because they're not against a light shade. They're against the light sky, or this is abstract, this light background. But this background, there's not as much contrast as there is between this shape here and that shape there. So that's what I'm going to be looking for on your projects. What I would do then is do a clipping mask. Now we got that ready for presentation. So now there's a clear focal point here. Good value contrast on the focal point. These other shapes don't have as much value contrast with them, so they're not getting too much attention. And the eye will be drawn right there to the middle. So this is definitely something I will look for. If it helps you to go in and put numbers on your shapes and kind of do the math and see where the biggest contrast is, definitely do that. But just know the human eye will always be drawn to the biggest value in contrast, light, extreme light against extreme dark. And that will be our goal on project 2 and then the projects in the future as well.